Phil, your head is very large today. Is there any reason I feel like your camera is more zoomed in than it is usually, or no?
I did zoom it in. I wanted to. I put in the code for big head mode today.
Okay. All right, and with that, welcome.
I was gonna. You know what? I'm not gonna change it. Sorry.
Yeah, don't change it. Just lean back if you need to. Lean forward, whatever. Welcome to the GGG Podcast, episode 26. Moving right along. We got a good show for you today. A lot of we got one big release this week in Dragon's Dogma. We're going to be talking about that for the main topic, but a good sampling of news as well. And joining me as always is Phil. Phil, how are you? How you doing this week? Have you had some time to play games, and what have you been playing?
Well, fortunately, Paul, I injured my knee terribly just before Dragon's Dogma 2 came out, and I've been able to do nothing but sit and play it. So I have a lot of thoughts and feelings to convey after I've spent probably a good 30 hours with this game at this point.
Wow, 30 hours.
Yeah.
That is impressive for it just coming out. Good for you. Good for you.
Feels great. But yeah, I've just been playing Dragon's Dogma. I think since we last talked, I also got in some Helldivers. That game just continues to be great. I saw my first flying of bugs recently.
Ah, yes.
They were a nightmare, and I'm excited to dive back into it once I have fully extricated myself from the heart of the dragon.
Well, who knows how long that could be. It could be anywhere from 40 to 150 hours. So,
could be years. Could be years, Paul. What have you been up to this week? Playing anything new? Anything fun?
I haven't really. It's unfortunate, but I've kind of stuck with the same things. I'm kind of getting into a routine a little bit. But yeah, I've been playing a lot of Helldivers. There's a helicopter above my apartment right now. I don't know if you can hear that.
I actually heard a little bit.
Okay. Well, they found me. But played some more of the finals, actually. So that's been good. But I don't know. I feel like I have to, if I'm going to play the finals, I almost feel like I have to commit to it a little bit. Just because with all of the new tools and the strategies that players are using, I feel like I'm kind of, even though the game came out not that long ago. Like I feel like I'm outdated on the strategies already, or whatever the meta is. But I've been doing okay. Been playing that, and then I got back on Skull and Bones, and I'm getting into
back on that booty.
Yeah, back on that booty, and I'm getting into the meta game in that. Which is a little weird, but it's somewhat interesting. It's just running rum trading operations and drug trading operations, which it feels a little weird because they're like hard drugs in that game. It's like, this is rated T, right? And
we're running fentanyl. That's
you make opium, so you process opium.
Cool.
So it's like, wow, that's a choice. I get that it's historically accurate, but it's definitely a choice. So anyway,
they have hydras in that, or like they have like sea creatures in that game, right? Like monsters.
They do. There's not like a lot of them yet.
Okay.
But I get the sense that they will be adding them with updates. There's a lot of like spooky boss pirate ships that are like, this pirate ship rose from the dead. Very Pirates of the Caribbean kind of a thing.
Well, it's a funny choice, like you're saying, to have ghost pirates and a kraken, and then also, hey, you gotta run some opium. I owe those guys some money. You gotta get some opium over there.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, I guess.
Ubisoft be doing that,
They definitely they make choices. So you know what? I actually did play Hades for like an hour this week, just because I was feeling like the roguelike, like for whatever reason I wanted to play that type of game, and so I re-downloaded that and played it for a little bit. But yeah, that's pretty much been it.
Okay.
But But yeah, let's get into our releases this week. We'll start out with Dragon's Dogma because we're not going to talk about it too much right this second because we want to save it for our main topic. But obviously, a huge release. I feel like this is the first game that has come out since Helldivers came out last month, where it's actually like, hey, I'm going to take up some internet space over Helldivers, where
Yeah.
all other games have failed to do that. So,
I think it's not all necessarily been positive, but it's definitely one of the things where you see like so many videos getting made about this game and like tips and tricks like that keeps filling up my algorithm.
right.
So there's a lot of talk going on about it. Some negative, some positive. We'll get to that more later. But a pretty big release, I think, from Capcom, like jumping from Dragon's Dogma 1, which was kind of not a release, or kind of like not a big thing,
Sure.
to now it's kind of on par with their Monster Hunter stuff. It's pretty good for them.
Yeah, I think this is great for Capcom. I have a lot of thoughts. We'll save them. We'll talk about them in a bit. Another release coming out this week is South Park Snow Day. I am a huge fan of South Park in general, and I was a huge fan of both of the South Park games, the Stick of Truth, the Fractured
And the
But
Fractured
Whole.
But Whole, very
Yes.
good.
But this game is very different in that it is a 3D multiplayer like hack and slash battle game,
Yeah.
and it is not being met well with players, with reviewers. A lot of people are just they're kind of a little dumbfounded that this game came out in the state that it's in. Not that it's a bad game, just that it's simplistic and it kind of lacks the tongue in cheek and the crassness that other South Park titles have had. Have you seen much about this game, Phil? South Park Snow Day?
I have. I saw that the reviews kind of dropped today, and IGN gave it a 3, which is saying something.
Yeah.
It's either 3 or 4, but yeah, the reviews. I checked some of the other things, like some of the review roundups. They've not all been as bad to it, but at most it's kind of getting like maybe an 8 or a 7.5. But a lot of things are falling more like to the 6.5 for like median.
Right.
Again, looking at it, I remember when I first saw a trailer for it, I was like, "Oh, this doesn't look good." Especially because the Fractured But Whole and the Stick of Truth were like watching an episode of the show, but like for hours long. Like it was so stylistically well done, and like everything kind of fit in that universe. I think going 3D makes it just feel off. And this type of gameplay, I don't think gives it as many opportunities to do like the weird, funny stuff that the South Park creators love to do with their games. So
Yeah. I agree. Like I just I get the want to like make the graphics better and to
mhm.
like change the format a little bit. Helldivers did it from 1 to 2. Other games have been semi-successful in those transitions, but I thought that the Stick of Truth and the Fractured But Whole, I'm going to try and say that as many times as I can on this episode. Like I just think that those games were great for a lot of reasons, but one of them being it felt like I was playing through a South Park movie.
Mhm.
It looked exactly like the show,
Mhm.
and while the turn-based RPG gameplay, there was some quirkiness in there
Mhm.
that you had to figure out, but overall, like I feel like that format of a game, that RPG, very narrative based format, allowed it to feel like South Park, whereas this just feels like a battle slasher game where it's just kind of South Park themed. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of like how I talk about the Halo TV show. The Halo TV show is a sci-fi show that's Halo themed, and
Mhm.
and that's what it is, and that's what this feels like. It feels like a themed game that doesn't fit as much, and like just the hilarious moments that you had in all the other South Park games. They were able to
And the names of those two were.
the Stick of Truth and the Fractured But whole.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So like I was a huge fan of those games. It's disappointing that they kind of put out a turd to be in the South Park spirit. But yeah, I definitely will not be picking this up, unfortunately.
Dang, dang. Well, next on our release we have Outpost Infinity Siege. What
Hmm.
is that, Paul?
So I plopped this game into our major releases because I have this fantasy of I am like obsessed with the Battle of Helm's Deep in Lord of the Rings. And
Mm,
I'm just like, I just want a game where you don't even have to like make a story. Like, just give me a game that's about castle defenses and fort
cool.
defenses. And I feel like
Yeah.
most of those games are like phone games where they work in this stupid microtransaction crap so that you can never actually fulfill the fort game fantasy. And so I
Hmm.
saw this game and I was like, Outpost Infinity Seat, that sounds like a fort game to me. Like I want, let's go. And so
All of those words match up to my interests.
exactly. And but what the game actually is, it's a first person tower defense shooter RTS.
Interesting.
Uh, and so it's about like you can fully upgrade your base and make a base. Then there's complete first person shooter gameplay in it so that, you know, while the raids are going on, that's how you're interacting with the world. It does have a, you know, single player campaign that you can play through. Unfortunately, from what I've heard of that, is that it's the voice acting is very bad and the story is very uninteresting. So but it is weirdly it's getting kind of okay reviews. It's just like it's an incredibly sophisticated, complicated tower defense game that if you put the time in, you might be able to get some enjoyment out of. But it's definitely not a casual experience. So
Okay. That's fair. I can jive with that. Like, give me something rich I could dig my teeth into. Sure, sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But unfortunately, not medieval themed. Very sci-fi and robotic kind of aesthetic. So, and now for the biggest release of 2024.
Yep.
Phil, you've
I know
heard of
you
this
guys have been
game.
waiting for this one. Yeah.
We've
Oh
all been
yeah.
waiting. Like, oh my god, it's.
Uh,
Go ahead.
no, no, no. You do it. I think this is maybe we should say it together. And I
Okay.
know this will be trouble in the editing bay.
No, no, no. It'll be great. It'll be on three. One,
All right.
two, three. DC
DC
Universe.
Universe Online. I know you got mid excited as soon as you said DC
I
Universe because I
did.
know that that IP is carried with it such high watermarks
I'm.
as the Snyder Cut and
Mm.
Batman v Superman.
Yeah, so this actually is the Snyder cut of DC Universe Online. For those who are interested. So you really won't like the resolution. It's 800 by 600.
Mhm.
And so
It's in
you,
black and white, and 40% of the game is in slow mo. Uh,
oh,
okay,
man.
yeah, it's nuts that this game still exists. I guess.
Yeah, it really is. But surprisingly, this is not a joke. People, DC Universe Online has officially launched today on PS5. They even released a little trailer that someone took 15 minutes to make and just put it out there. They're like, "This is Batman. This is Wonder Woman. This is Superman. DC Universe Online."
Yeah, I mean, you definitely need to see those graphics in 4K. Well, no, it was already in 4K. 60 frames a set. Nope, it was already very easily doable.
Hmm.
Okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
Uh, it's free.
Okay. So first off, did you ever play this game back in the day?
Yeah, on the PS3.
Right on. I did as well. I did as well.
Mhm.
So like we are familiar. Like, but this, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this game came out in 2011. So that's it might be 2012 at best.
Mhm.
And so like I really didn't even know that this game was still going. I thought they would have shut down the servers, but The MMO audience is still alive and well somewhere. But yeah, don't really know who this is for, other
Yeah.
than the person who's playing it on their PS4 for whatever reason. Uh,
Some
so
some guy woke up today and was like, "All right, back to the wait, what? There's an update?" Re-downloaded the whole game, uh, and
it
he's just living his best life right now.
Yeah. For those people who are not familiar with DC Universe Online, probably the younger audience, it is essentially a DC Universe MMO where you can create your own character. There's specific powers you can pick from, and you can pair those powers with like fighting styles and stuff like that, and you'd fight alongside the heroes in the DC universe. So it's a make your own superhero kind of game. And it was pretty successful when it first came out, but frankly, it has gotten some updates, but it is a pretty dated game.
Hmm.
But as actually, we'll use this. Let's use this as a way to segue into one of our news topics
Yeah.
for dated games. So, some information recently came out. We're getting into the news now. World of Warcraft, the most famous, the most popular MMO to ever rock the gaming universe.
Hmm.
Oh God, I got a hold in a sneeze. I don't know if I'm gonna do it. Oh boy.
Oh, the suspense, folks.
But recently it came out that they have about 7.25 million monthly subscribers in World of Warcraft currently, which like shocked me so much. I know at some point I think they had over like 20 million, back in their heyday. But I could not believe that there were so many people still playing World of Warcraft. Were you ever a World of Warcraft player, Phil?
I played for a very brief time, but this feels like a really good segue to talk about our sponsor, Rocket Money. Do you have subscriptions that you forgot about, like say World of Warcraft for 15 years? Probably you and around 7 million other people do.
Oh my
'Cause
God, that's a great point. How many of those subscribers do you think like are not active users and they just left it on their credit card? Like,
I think maybe a million people,
yeah,
maybe a million, like a good chunk of that amount is people who are just like, oh yeah, this is just a normal thing. I don't look at my bills.
right. Yeah, that's a very good point. I did not consider that at all.
But I
But
do think that that's still a lot of people playing World of
yes,
Warcraft.
yes.
Uh, and that's insane considering, I mean, like, they've kept it pretty well updated and they did World of Warcraft original. Like, they've done a lot of really cool things to support that user base.
Hmm.
So I think that support is kind of being rewarded, despite the fact that you still have to pay, what is it, $8, $9 a month to interact with the service.
I mean, I always thought it was like 15 a month. That's
Yeah.
kind of where they standardized it. So I know that they have different levels, tier subscriptions now.
Hmm.
And I think you can play for free up to level 20, um, which is how they get you. Uh,
Pretty good way.
yeah. But yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm curious with how the gaming market has shifted. If MMOs are going to have this comeback, I mean, I've on the Golden Glazed Gaming TikTok and on the YouTube, been posting some Dune Awakening, gameplay and trailers and stuff like that, and that is an MMO, but like you don't really see a lot of MMOs that are coming. I mean, technically, Skull and Bones is an MMO,
True.
technically, but I think like the bigger games are more match based as opposed to having a big world that players are sharing. So like Fortnite, Call of Duty, those are all Apex. They're all match based games. There's
Yeah.
not like I mean, I don't know, not yet. I'm sure Fortnite will change that because I think Fortnite's going to become Ready Player One.
Yeah,
That's
it's gonna get there.
Yeah. So I don't know. Do you see MMOs making a comeback by any means, or has that time passed?
I, I I think so. I mean, I think honestly the best time for MMOs would have been during the COVID lockdowns. Like if someone had created an MMO that was popular enough, besides uh, Animal Crossing.
Hmm.
Um, they would have really, I think, hit the jackpot there. That said, I can kind of see like due to some advances in technology that we might get a resurgence of MMOs because they don't require as much like server side to okay, you're not you see this person at a distance, but they're not actually like instance into your game. It's just a reflection of them. All of this stuff that could make it probably a little bit more feasibly doable.
Hmm.
And I mean, in a sense, you have games like Rust. Oh, thanks, Siri. Um, she started yelling.
Chiming in there. Did she have something to add?
Yeah. Since he didn't have an answer for that, so
Oh,
thanks again. Thanks for nothing. But I think we like with games like Rust, Ark, like they're kind of uh not massive multiplayer online games. So I
Mhm.
think like something in that vein, taken up to the nth degree to make it an MMO, will happen soon. It's just nailing down the technology.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. Um,
Speaking of games that I feel like could be MMOs
ooh,
in terms of their online features,
ooh.
Grand Theft Auto 6 raised some headlines today. Paul, do you want to tell us about their news story?
Well, it's not much of a news story, other than they commented on that they did plan GTA 6 for a 2025 release, but they are entirely prepared as a company to wait until 2026 if they do not meet certain deadlines. It was kind of implied, but not said specifically, but it was implied that it was connected to kind of back to office transitions. So they obviously had, like many gaming studios and many companies in general, have allowed employees to do work from home, and they're in the process of like bringing the employees back into the office, and that process has slowed things down. It's a little unclear specifically what it was, but they're I don't put it past them. They could totally do 2026. They can release it whenever they want. They can
Yeah,
release this
they would
game whenever they want.
still make infinite money.
Yes. I will say that that slight, teeny tiny little news story made Take Two's stock price, I think, drop about 8% over 2 days, just
Ah,
because
damn.
of a delayed release to 2026. So very interesting on the stock front.
Yeah, I think there's the thing that I hope to not see happen, but could 100% see happening
Mhm.
is salty fans getting involved with like the dev team, like finding people, doxing them, and like threatening them to go back to work. Um, I feel like you get some crossover with the people who really hate the idea of work from home and people who would do that type of thing. So,
Sure.
hey, if you're out there, don't don't be mean to the game devs.
Don't be
Just let them make the
toxic.
game they want to make. Yeah,
Yeah,
let them
just
make the game they want to make.
yeah. It's gonna be good, guys. It's gonna be good, and like, if it isn't, we can complain about it after it comes out, and we can rip it
Yeah,
apart specifically instead of generally. So, yeah.
that that would be the best case scenario. If the game sucked and we all agreed,
Yes.
and for a specific reason.
Yes.
Um, well, do you mind if I jump onto the
Please
next news story here?
do
Well,
it.
okay.
Do it.
Larian has come out and said they will not be doing Baldur's Gate 3, sorry, 3 DLC or Baldur's Gate 4.
Hmm.
Um, they have departed from the whole D&D franchise, and they're going to be doing something else, which may be Divinity 3, which is kind of like the precursor to Baldur's Gate. It
Hmm.
used their own rule set. Um, but allegedly, like reports from inside the studio said that people were cheering to not have to work more on Baldur's Gate material, which I think I could understand because they worked on that game for so long, so many hours. But also, Wizards of the Coast can be kind of a butthead when it comes to their workers and how they treat them. So I think maybe Larian might be looking to divest themselves from being involved with them in that capacity.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't blame Larian for getting out of Baldur's Gate. Like the amount of hours and just years actually just of making that game, like if I was in charge of a development team like that, like I couldn't imagine asking them to do it again.
Yeah.
Like for a game that big.
Imagine like so many. Here's the thing too. They kind of walked into the room, presented us a big, beautiful thing that won a bunch of awards. Uh, they probably feel like they hit everything they need to hit. They're like, all right, cool. On to the next thing. Next game we're doing, Garfield Racing 2. Suck it. And then just slide out.
Oh man. Oh man.
But whatever they want to do, they got a blank check in my book.
Yeah, I mean, you know, studios and devs, you know, I'm sure people artistically want to try different things. So I'm excited to see what they make next. And you know, Baldur's Gate 3 is a great game, you know, especially for D&D fans. So enjoy it.
Mhm.
But you know, don't get greedy. So
There's literally so many hundreds of hours of game in that game that you could play it for a few years and still experience new things. That's fine. And this might also be a bargaining tactic where they're like, "Hey, listen, we're not going to make Baldur's Gate 4 unless you give us a bunch of money."
yeah,
Um,
it's like
but
Hugh Jackman coming back for Wolverine. It could happen later
mm,
down the road. You just gotta be patient.
good. I'm fine with that. I'm
Yeah,
fine with that. Make
yeah.
us work for it. Yeah, nothing, I guess nothing huge there, but pretty interesting news.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, moving right along, Microsoft is working on some handheld prototypes to you know, sync with Xbox and Game Pass and everything like that. And they specifically, I think, went after the PlayStation Portal and said they would make it obsolete. So, which is like, you know, cool and everything. And I'm down for more handheld things, but I mean, there's a lot of them on the market. I feel right now,
Yeah.
and I don't know. It's just like I think I just saw a review for a new handheld PC that came out. I think it was this month, and so it's a pretty dense market to launch a handheld in when you know you can already run Xbox on you know all these other devices. And I also think it's kind of a little bit odd that we talked a lot about Xbox going you know cross platform and them
Mhm.
getting kind of out of the hardware space. Not that they're not going to make any hardware, but it just I don't know. I do you I guess you could say the same about the PlayStation Portal, other than like the PlayStation Portal is just it's a screen. It's not, you know, it's a playing device.
Yeah.
It's not an
Yeah.
independent unit.
Well,
So
I remember seeing a story just, I think, earlier today about how the PlayStation Portal has defied sales expectations. It's still like moving.
mhm,
And I think more and more people are picking it up as it goes because they're seeing, oh, this works so well.
right.
If Microsoft could come out with something that was like just a handheld and a screen that you could almost make route to anything, they would make the Portal obsolete.
Right.
Um, but I do have to say, like a lot of the games that I play on Game Pass, it would be cool to have mobile, like Cassette Beasts. I think I have Stardew on there. There's
Mhm.
just a lot of little indies that I don't play anywhere else that would be so cool to have uh, in your hands while you're watching TV, like, and with all the power of your computer doing the processing. Um, so listen, Microsoft, if you can do it, I'm in, but you
Yeah.
got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that has made the Portal successful is the price. It's, you know, being at $200, it's like, yeah, it's not cheap, but most other handheld devices that, you know, can do what that does, you know, are going to be 600 to like $1,000, some even more than $1,000.
Yeah.
You know, looking at Valve's version, like you can get I think you can get the cheapest one for 4 or 500, but it like barely has a hard drive. And
And those are different because they're closer to the Switch. Like they have processing built in.
yeah,
This the portal is just sending
yes,
like the signal. So
Exactly. And that's how they keep the price low, is it's not doing the heavy lifting. So I'm
Hmm.
curious to see what Microsoft does. I'm all for Microsoft making more hardware. So keep trying. Let's keep it
I, I
going.
I feel like we're constantly just rooting for Microsoft, despite the fact that we dunked on them. We're like, come on, buddy, you can do it.
I
Just try.
I just want a competitive market, because if there's a
Yeah.
competitive market, you get better video games, and that's what I want. So
We
like
wouldn't have had the PS4 if the PS3 didn't land in a pile of dog
it's
mess.
true.
Like
The PS3 was like it was rough. Like, and I was a
that was the
Sony.
result of no competition.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So, okay, moving right along. Oh, so this study came out. It's actually a study done by the parent company of GameSpot, which is honestly a big source of news. I use GameSpot all the time for articles and where a lot of our news that we report on comes from. And this study it was obviously, it's going to be a little biased because the people that they, talk to and everything, they are probably of a younger audience, but they noticed that people in general in 2023 primarily like gaming as opposed to other versions of entertainment, and that gaming is starting to overtake movies and television as a leisure activity, as opposed to like where for most people, I think, come home from a hard day of work, you just slap on the TV or watch the game or something like that. And
Mhm.
now, especially our generation and probably a generation below us, they're playing video games. Do you think that this is like a trend that we're going to continue seeing, that gaming is going to be like probably one of the primary sources of entertainment going forward?
Yeah, I think it kind of lands in this interesting space where, you know, I remember being a teen and like calling my friends, just sitting on the phone with them and like watching TV, but we were on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So you got that social connection. I think it fills in both like, okay, you're being entertained by a screen and like by seeing something very interesting visually, but also a lot of the times you're playing multiplayer, you're connecting with your friends. There's like a whole ecosystem built around this, much like the NFL has a whole like product and entertainment ecosystem built around it.
Yeah, fantasy
Games,
football and but that's a
fantasy
game
football,
technically.
it is.
Yeah.
So I feel like gaming has all of these like so many different fandoms kind of built into it that it's very easy to get kind of sucked in, and then once you get used to like gameplay mechanics, this, that, or the other thing, you stay and you want to find something that does something similar to that. The amount of time that I've had with my friends playing Helldivers that I haven't got to see in a while, versus like the amount of time that we talk over the phone or do like Discord calls, it's crazy. And yeah, I think that's the issue. That is like it's a social and entertainment thing all cooked into one. Pretty cool.
Absolutely. I think like you really hit the nail on the head there. And I think that there are so many. I think that people who don't know much about gaming in general, they think of it as one singular thing. And
Hmm.
there's so many different, like I wish like I should make a pie chart of all the different sections of like gamers out there, of like
Hmm.
you got the RPG D&D heads, the Baldur's Gate lovers. You have the competitive compete-aholics who are on Apex and on Call of Duty. You have people who play more independent games, or like I think what Discord has done for gaming has been huge, especially coming out of the pandemic, where it's like it really makes it like a social, area to, even though it's you're sitting in front of your computer, or you're on
Hmm.
a console or something like that. But it kind of gives the sensation of, I got off of work, or I'm done with my day today. Let me go into like this digital bar or this digital speakeasy,
Yeah,
um, you know, an evolution of a chat room, and a more regulated one.
yeah.
So,
Well, I think there's another element too. Like when you go to a bar, when you go out to eat with your friends, which is something that like I think several generations ago that was what you would do as your leisure activity. You get home from work, you chill for a minute, you go out. Um, Now it would cost so much to do all that, and you pay $60, $70 once for a game. and you have a social, like you have a little bar built for just you and your friends.
Yeah,
It's pretty great.
it is. It's fantastic. So I'm curious to see. Like, I definitely know that the average age of gamers is going up, and I think it'll just continue to do that. So I'm curious if there will be more similar studies that come out a couple years from now, and how that trend is trending. So
I definitely think about myself as an old man playing video games sometimes and being like, how long am I going to do this? Probably till I die. Probably
yeah.
I will die as Sonic the Hedgehog races across an end level thing. Um, Speaking of things that are dying,
Oh, do
let's
go
talk
on.
about Halo Infinite.
Let's talk about Halo and
Uh, the Yappening is returned. Um, Now,
the
for all you Master Chief heads
the what?
fans out there, you know what the Yappening is.
Do I know what the Yappening is? Does anyone know what the Yappening is?
Paul and I had to like look through a press briefing to figure out what the Yappening was before the show because we were like, what the hell is going on in Halo? Um, so I'll give my breakdown of what I think the Yappening is.
Okay, great.
There is a grunt named Yap or Yappening, I don't know, but he's got a bunch of things that he's just giving out for. He's like a loot grunt.
Yeah.
And the event is you compete in multiplayer stuff. It's a lot of big team battle. I think like big team battle snipers is making a rotation into the
Yeah.
main thing.
Shoddy snipes, that kind of stuff.
Shoddy snipes, really really fun. Feels like a summertime event. But you get all of these different like crazy emotes and skins and gun colors. Uh, it's kind of got a Rage 2 vibe, like the whole event, like with the colored smoke and
Sure.
brightly colored things.
Yeah.
Um, that's my best take at what's going on.
So from what I could tell, so I know we found out that the first Yappening, happened in 2022,
Sorry,
and
yappened.
Yappened. Sorry, it yappened in 2022, and and it was an event. I believe it was 2 weeks to a month, something like that. And so it had special promotions and rewards with specialized game types. And I think that this is an expansion. Or a continuation of that idea, but now that Halo Infinite has gotten the updates that it's going to get. They're still going to do, obviously, they're still doing events and promotions and stuff, but it's not going to be getting any other updates. Maybe bug fixes, that kind of stuff. But I mean, the game modes did sound fun. There's, like everybody gets on an ATV and you spawn with missile launchers. That sounds like a fun game mode. So I might check it out. But I don't know. I think that kind of along with Star Wars Battlefront 2017, Halo Infinite just launched with a terrible progression system. And when you launch with a terrible progression system in a grindy multiplayer game, people are gonna abandon it because they're not getting that progression. They're not getting that dopamine. So I'm happy to see that they're doing an event, but my feelings and thoughts end there. Like,
Yeah, it's cool to see that the heartbeat monitor that is Halo Infinite is ticked up once more. This like I guess an addendum story to this. Kelly 087, who is a Spartan from the Halo Reach books, has just been added to Rainbow Six Siege. I keep seeing ads for that, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's cute. That's it.
All right. Well, that's it with the news. Let's get into some Dragon's Dogma talk, because that's what most people are talking about on the internet right now. Big release. You have gotten a substantial amount of time with this game. So I'll let you have the floor for this. What are your initial impressions, reviews aside, outside opinions excluded? What's Phil's perspective on Dragon's Dogma 2?
Well, I just checked 32 and a half hours
Ooh,
of
okay.
playtime. That's not including probably the 2 hours that I spent in the character creator before the game came out. But in that time, I have discovered that I really love what Dragon's Dogma has to offer. It's got a lot of flaws, but the risk reward calculus that you're constantly doing in that game and experimentation and like discovering new ways to participate in combat is, I think, second to none in terms of games. It definitely feels a lot like a Monster Hunter game,
Hmm.
but with an RPG, like a stronger RPG shell built around it. Um, yeah, I think there is some negatives, but for me, who's just trying to like engage with this game and just here's exactly what they've given me, I have found myself just eating it up and wanting more. Like after the podcast today, after I do all of the adult stuff I have to do, I'm just logging back in. I'm seeing what my pawns are up to. Um, there's yeah, that so I guess if I had to give it like some sort of number, it would be as very close to like a 10 for me. I don't know what
Wow.
exactly what, yeah, but it's quite good. Again, a lot of issues, so I don't think you
Sure.
could say it's a perfect game, but yeah, what have you like you've heard about some of the discourse. I feel like the performance is kind of one of the big things that's a lot of people are knocking it for.
Yeah, I've heard on PC there are performance issues. And so it's, and I've talked about this before, but, sometimes, the console version is kind of the better version to go with because you know that it's going to run a certain way as opposed to guessing
Totally.
with your PC. So,
Mm. The
but
it's been interesting. So I'm playing on PC. Most of the time, the game runs at like 60 frames a second. When I
great.
get into towns, it drops down to about like 35 to 40.
And I've heard it's the NPCs in the game that people are resorting to killing NPCs to get the frame rate better.
Yes, yeah, that is one of the things you can do apparently because them charting just like what every NPC is doing throughout the day, I guess is so processor intensive
Hmm.
that it is just slowing everything down. Um, it's I don't know, it's definitely kind of a bummer, but also it hasn't ruined anything for me. I just when I go to town, I'm like, all right, things are a little slower here. It's just how it is.
Great.
Uh,
That's not too bad.
there, it's not terrible. And again, if you're playing on PS4, 5 or Xbox Series X, the game's just locked at 30, or you could set it to be locked at 30,
Hmm.
so you won't really notice that difference.
Okay.
Kind of a positive. Yeah. I guess the other big thing that a lot of people have pointed out that's kind of an issue is the microtransactions.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, it's I feel like it's an interesting thing because the microtransactions that Capcom is participating in with this game are kind of almost exactly similar to the way that they've been with their last several big releases. Um, Resident Evil 4, for example, you could buy sort of time savers or items for in-game, but all things you can find in-game. Similarly, Devil May Cry 6 or 5 or whichever the most recent one was, um, you could buy like different types of blood to increase your spending power in the game.
Hmm.
Dragon's Dogma has a lot of particular items, but they are all items that you find pretty readily in the game, with the exception of one. Um, and the blowback has been just kind of surreal because I think a lot of people are discovering the game is very judicious about how it gives those things out. Like you got to earn them, but yeah, I think people were expecting to just like be fighting them more regularly, but the game's style
So
itself is very slow in doling out those
okay.
rewards.
So could you be a little bit more specific? So like
Yeah,
what exactly are the I know that one of the microtransactions is to change your appearance of your character.
yeah.
How much do you know how much that microtransaction is?
I think it's in real world money. I think it's like $2,
Okay.
and then I think in the game you could buy it for around 10,000 gold, which is something you can get like on a single outing.
Okay.
So yeah, nothing too terrible, but also kind of sucks that it had to be sold. Similarly, there's things called fairy stones, Ferry, and that's how you fast travel in the game between different port crystals.
Okay.
So uh, that's like something that I kind of get, but I feel like as someone who played the first one, I went in knowing like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be walking a lot in this game.
Right.
Um, and I think those are 99 cents. The biggest issue for me in their microtransactions is this thing called port crystals that you can like set fast travel points. And you find those very rarely in the game, but you can buy one for $2.
I see.
So I think that's kind of a bummer because you could basically make yourself a network of things you can fast travel between, which you will still need fairy crystals to like get around,
Right.
which is not gonna you're not gonna find those too often.
Mhm.
So I kind of get it. I definitely feel like they are more shortcuts than
Yeah.
like yeah.
Shortcut purchases. There's a lot of games that don't let you change your appearance, once you make a character at all. So
Mm.
I know that that's kind of a newer trend where you can change your appearance in RPGs. And I have not played the game, so the I can't comment too much on the microtransactions, but I will say at least they are micro. Because
Yeah.
I think on the list that I've seen, I didn't see any transactions above $3. So that's good, but it is a $70 game. So, like,
Mm.
should there be microtransactions in the first place? Do you think there's an alternative? Because you said they were shortcut transactions. Is there like, would you rather that there's armor sets that you can buy for real world money or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I prefer it this way
Okay.
just because like armor sets are something that I would want to earn in game more
Right.
so.
Yeah.
Not like, oh, I could get more of this particular item that I have, but like something that is exclusively locked behind a paywall is kind of more of a bummer to me.
Mhm.
I don't know exactly why that is. Uh, I here's my best hope, and I think the most likely scenario is the game devs were like, we got to put microtransactions in the game from the higher ups, like they see that that makes more money, so we have to put it in somewhere. Let's just put it in as something the characters can get anyway.
Yeah.
Um, I don't. It does kind of suck. Like I do wish it wasn't in a $70 game,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
But I think that's just the new reality of where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah. I am. Yeah. It's true. It's they want that money over time.
Mhm.
So I don't know how much money Dragon's Dogma 2 took to develop, but it doesn't seem like a cheap game. So I'll give my impressions of like I've seen a lot of content from the game, a lot of reviews, and I'll be honest, I think Capcom really has something here.
Mm.
It to me, it's a fusion of a lot of games, a lot of RPGs. It kind of feels um, like like four games rolled into one for me, where it's like it's Elden Ring, it's Monster Hunter, it's Dragon Age, and it's The Witcher.
Yeah.
And I will say that usually Capcom RPGs do not do it for me. But I think that, and while the story is, kind of whatever from what a lot of reviewers say, I think that there's something with the combat here that they've really figured out. And that to me, not being a big Dark Souls or Elden Ring guy, it's just like this doesn't look as hard. It's not that it's easy, but it doesn't look as hard as an Elden Ring. It looks a little bit, but at the same time, you have that, you can climb on animals like Monster Hunter, and then the one thing that one of the things that I don't like about Monster Hunter is that you never see the creature's health bar. So you're like,
Yeah.
how do I have to whack this thing like 400 times before it goes down? I have no idea how long this is going to
Mm.
take. And and you can tell me if this is wrong or not, but in Dragon's Dogma 2, it just feels like things they seem more slayable, of course, if
Mm.
they're in your level bracket, but they seem more slayable within a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely the case. Like you see a troll walking around, you're like, I could take that. Especially that's helped by the fact you have pawns, which I can get back more into later, but they could just change up the way that you fight so much, and having like three pretty smart AIs that are helping you tackle something You're like, hey, I'm gonna let this guy go grab aggro while I heal. Um, it adds a lot to the combat. I was just like making my way through this ruined castle that I found. I was like, this looks interesting. Like I was looking for a city to rest because in the game you have your massive health bar, and when you get hit, it goes down, and then you have like a gray bar that goes down a little bit too. So
Mm.
your max health gets depleted over time. So you
Mm.
can heal back up to a lesser amount until you take a full rest. Um, so you're kind of doing this resource management the entire time you're exploring. Like, okay, that fight took it out of me, but I think I could keep going a little bit before I make camp. Um, and so I found this whole like massive structure, and then it led to a cave structure, and I found a sphinx at the end of it who gave me riddles that I needed to solve. And each time I solved one of the Sphinx's riddles, the Sphinx was very creepy, by the way, like this deity godlike figure. Um, it gives you like a reward, and I don't, man, I don't know. There's just like a magic to the game where you have these moments where you discover something like completely wild, like a dragon and a cyclops fighting, and I'm like, that's a little bit out of my pay grade, so I'm just gonna keep on walking. uh, there's just a lot of those sort of Skyrim-esque moments, like when you found a dragon just flying
Right.
around in Skyrim.
Yeah.
Those type of things happen. Similarly, you could set up your camp for the night, and let's say you pissed off a griffin earlier, it can fly back in the middle of the night and attack your camp and like disrupt your rest.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden you have to have this night fight with a griffin that's flying around. Um, yeah, I don't know. They just did a lot of really, really wonderful things with this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of Western RPG developers should take a hard look at this game and look at what it does right. I think something that stood out to me is the variety of believe they're called vocations in the game, or combat roles or whatever. And so like all of that, like it looks like every class, obviously has its quirks and everything, but that every class looks interesting. Every class is viable. And so I think it looks great. I think like Dragon Age BioWare. If you are looking at gameplay for your game, look at this game and look at how they fight dragons. Maybe put some more dragons in your game, BioWare. It's called Dragon
Eh,
Age. Like
What was the third Dragon Age 3, Dragon Age
Inquisition.
Inquisition?
Hmm.
No, it was that. Yes, yeah, Dragon Age Inquisition was, I thought like the story was pretty great.
It was,
Um,
yeah,
if they could do something like take the combat out of this game and merge it with that level of storytelling,
yeah,
I think that EA would have something that would just move gangbusters. But the problem is, I think like 99% of the work in Dragon's Dogma is in like the systems and how they interact. And then the kind of veneer on top of it isn't that great. Like the story isn't amazing. It's nothing to write home about.
right,
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just a sucker for when like systems work well together.
yeah,
And this game just rewards creativity. Like, okay, if I freeze something and then push it off of a cliff, it'll take more fall damage and shatter. Like
yeah.
they
Sounds great.
they think, yeah. There's a couple of different vocations that I've got to mess around with, uh, and they are all, like you said, they're very varied. There is one specifically for like fighting against dragons, and that one is like a guy who uses the spear and shoots magic. So you do kind of like a lot of aggro damage, and then you can kind of do battle control. Um, your pawns all have vocations as well, and you pick those up from other players. Two things about the pawns. One, the first thing that I loved is you find this one area where there are elves in the game, and when you find them, they speak a gibberish elf language, and even the subtitles like come in elfish. But you can find pawns with a specific like specialty called Woodland Wordsmith, and then if you have that pawn in your party, they translate what the elves are saying to you. So it's like all these little things that are kind of like hidden, but if you think about it, like make sense. Uh, Additionally, in the game right now, there's a lot of people freaking out over this thing called the Dragon's Plague that
Okay.
can affect your pawns. Uh, and what it will make them do is they will start disobeying you more so, start like they'll do more damage, but they'll not listen to when you call them to you. they'll kind of give you more lip if you're running around too much. They'll be like, slow down. Um, but if you let it get too far and then rest in an inn, a cutscene will happen wherein that pawn will turn into a dragon and then kill everyone in the town that you're staying at.
Oh my god.
Yes.
All right. That
And
wow.
when it happens, it can ruin your save because it could kill like story important NPCs. Like they're just
Oh.
gone. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds
So,
pretty game breaking. Well, while
yeah.
while you're talking about pawns, I wanted to touch on that because such a big element of so many RPGs are like your companions. Like Baldur's Gate 3 was all about the companion. I mean, it was not, but you know what I mean. There was such a
Yeah.
focus on all of your different companions. You know, Dragon Age we were just talking about, and all the BioWare games. Mass Effect is all about companions as well. And so, like in this game, they're pawns. Is there I guess is there character progression? Is there relationship progression? Are there like, oh, this pawn has a side quest for me that if I do it, I'll earn their trust level or whatever. Is there anything like that, or are they just like your soldiers?
They are they're so you have like a main pawn that always sticks with you,
Okay.
and they have like you set their tone of voice, and which is like their personality. You set like what they do in combat, like are they more healy, are they more doing attack stuff? Then you set their vocation, which is their class. And then when you go online, you'll find other people that have given you those things. But when you pick up one of those pawns, you'll see that they have a quest attached to them. And if you were to do that quest, you will get an item from that pawn's owner. So someone might be like, all right, I need my pawn to kill 12 Cyclops. And when they do, you get 10,000 gold.
Okay.
So there are quests, but they're sort of like built in by other players.
Okay. So
Um,
they're more like resource gathering things as opposed to like relationship progression.
Yeah,
Okay.
there is an interesting thing too, though, like where if you have a pawn that wasn't with you before and you're walking through an area, if you haven't discovered a chest or a point of interest nearby, they'll be like, "Oh, in another realm, I found this nearby. Do you want me to lead you to it?" And then if you tell them yes, they'll like take the lead of the party and run you over to where to get this item.
Hmm.
So it's a lot like the little messages in Dark Souls
Yeah.
or Elden Ring that you can read on the ground,
Yeah.
just as a character.
Okay.
Yeah. There's also a relationship thing that you can do in the game where you give people like gifts and they become your beloved, which is kind of fun. It's
It's
cute.
for the romance. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of like really cute little details. Like I found this brothel owner
Hmm.
who I thought was dashing, so I started giving her flowers. And I've noticed when I talk to her, like her cheeks get really red and like her animation changes a little bit. Like she kind of does like this flirty and she puts a fan up in front of her face.
Ooh.
Um, but I know this specifically because when I played the first Dragon's Dogma, um, I was just giving items to the shopkeeper to like he was just kind of like big chef looking dude, like rotund guy, very sweet. But when I got to the end of the game, the dragon saw fit to like abduct my beloved. And so out of nowhere, this guy was my beloved, and he was just like, "Why am I here? Why did this dragon kidnap me?" They're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, dude. I gave you too many flowers. My bad."
That's awesome. That's very interesting.
Yeah, the game leaves a lot of room for that kind of silliness, and I really appreciate that. Um, and while it has its issues, it's like Bethesda jank. For a while
Sure.
we were all enamored by it.
Hmm.
I think this is Dragon's Dogma is still in the era of its jank. It's still early enough that we could be like, they're still learning. They'll
Yeah,
figure it out.
they'll update. I mean, I believe there was actually an update today, the day that we are recording this, for the game that fixes a lot of jankiness. So I know the camera has
Yeah.
kind of been a problem, especially when like fighting flying units.
Hmm.
So hopefully they address that as well. So, uh, but
Yeah.
but yeah, we
Overall, yeah, great game. I'd say you should try it if you. I wish renting a game was still more of a thing because it's
I
definitely like
might
a
pick it
lot
up.
of
I might pick it up because
yeah.
like it definitely it looks good. I definitely think the star of the show is the gameplay. Like
Hmm.
I'm not going to be buying it for the story. It's to to try out a really cool combat system. I am a little worried about the inventory management if it's too cumbersome, but I haven't heard negative things about that. But that's always the thing in RPGs that I'm like, is the game mostly menus and me sorting inventory? Are we getting into that Starfield territory?
There's a lot of like getting yourself down to wait to like when you
Mm.
go on a mission, you kind of, again, I'm a sucker for this like slight bit of abuse where I'm like, okay, I got to put a bunch of stuff in my chest at home
Mhm.
so that I'm like at average weight so I can run more easily, I can move faster. Because if you get not just fully over encumbered, then you can't sprint. But if you're like at very heavy, even your maximum sprint and your regular jog speeds are a little bit slower
Mm.
and you use up more stamina. Uh, but it's kind of that risk reward of like, okay, well, I'm pretty heavy right now, but I think I can make it back to town if I just grab this staff. Then you're like just lugging stuff down the street, and then a dragon flies over, and you're like, I should have left the staff. Um, yeah, yeah,
Okay, well, some great first impressions. I'm sure that Dragon's Dogma will continue to be a game people are talking about for probably all of spring, and I'm excited to see. I don't know. I'm excited for RPGs. The game got me excited for RPGs, which is
yeah.
yeah.
So
So
that's what I love to hear.
yeah. So, yeah, very cool. But yeah, we're going to wrap it up right there. We are hitting time for our podcast. So thank you for listening to episode 26 of the GGG podcast. If you have not already, please like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, or if you're listening to us through a podcast provider, subscribe to us there. That would be fantastic. March is coming to a close. This has been a great opening to the year. We've had a lot of good games coming out. And I'm excited to keep it rolling. People were talking about how 2023 was one of the best years in video games, and I think we're staying strong in 2024. So I'm excited to see it.
There's a lot of huge games, and I think just so many more to come. Sometimes I wish there wasn't so many games. Sometimes I wish I could save money, but that is not the world that the good Lord has given us, and I will lean in.
Yeah, you got to pay those $2 to change your appearance. So
yeah.
All right, we're gonna call it there. But peace out, everybody, and thank you for listening.
Bye.